Wolfpack. What's going on? It's your boy, the Wolf of Road Street. RoadStreetJournal.com. We breed and feed you fantasy wolves. Here with your Week 14 Waiver Wire and FAAB show. We are 1 week away. Many of us, this already is essentially the fantasy playoffs, win or go home type of situations all across the fantasy universe. So I am stoked to try to give you some players to help you push on into the playoffs. If you're already in, awesome. We'll do a few different types of buckets of players throughout the show, including guys, win now, you got to get in. Here's some usable streamers for Week 14, but also maybe you've already clinched your playoff spot. Maybe you've even clinched a bye, and you're looking ahead to Week 15, 16, wherever you're at. All that good stuff we'll be talking about as well. So we'll go through, as always, my top 15 guys on Waiver Wire with, again, more look ahead, more right now. We'll break all that down as we go. I do think there's tons of intriguing wide receivers this week. It seems at first glance like, another crappy waiver wire week. But as you guys know, every year there's always a stretch run hero, usually a wide receiver at that. And I think I have at least 2 to 3 guys that could go berserk down the stretch run as your wide receiver threes that end up carrying you to titles. We know it happens every year. So I'll give you those guys. Plus, we'll end with like the top 8 or so handcuffs that are out there in almost every league as well. That could really stack your bench with upside as we get here into the playoffs as well, because you really don't need those crappy wide receiver 5s or 6s that are filling in during bye weeks. Those are over after this week. So get rid of them, get some upside on the bench. We'll go through some of those names as well. But as you come in, I'm seeing some of those thumbs up already come in. I really appreciate that, Wolfpack. Please consider smashing that thumbs up button to help us get out to more people, to continue to grow the pack. Be so appreciated as we close in almost 50 away now from that 2K goal. Would be so appreciated as well if you consider subscribing over here on YouTube, getting those questions on in. We got a few already starting in. I will go through this. It usually takes about 20 minutes or so to get through the top waiver wires, and it's on to every question you guys have. We'll be happy to answer them all. I always like to start with anyone that's over 50% roster, but still could be out there in your leagues just to go and consider. Devontae Parker certainly fits that bill. First game back, 5 targets, hauls them all in for 62 yards. Tua now has completed over 76% of his passes since coming back from injury. Insanity how accurate he has been playing, and he was making some high-degree difficulty throws. That sideline throw to Parker to move the chains and seal the game was unbelievable. A trust throw we really didn't see him taking last year. So it's clear to me those guys are in a new type of sync, new type of bond, and I really think Parker facing off the Jets this they have a bye this week, but fantasy playoffs, we're looking at the Jets, the Saints, and Tennessee. All 3 of those teams are bottom 5 against wide receivers. Great matchups. The guy is looking solid. He's averaging right now 8 targets per game, about a 24% target share, right around 80-ish yards on the season. He's looking great. So right back into double-digit points his first game back. You love to see it, at least in PPR leagues. I think he's going to go. He could be a stretch run hero. We've seen him do it before. In fact, just a couple seasons ago, he was the wide receiver 2 behind only Michael Thomas for the second half of the season. So we know the talent's there. 2 is playing really well. He'd be the first guy I look at if he's out there in leagues. But at quarterback, moving now into guys that are 50% under or below that threshold. Taysom Hill, we talked about him last week. He was in my top 6 pickups. He certainly was my number 1 QB last week, and that panned out pretty damn big. He couldn't have been any worse. 4 interceptions, real life-wise. The definition of close those eyes and just enjoy the points at the end of it all, right? 34% rostered now, so still out there in a ton of leagues. If you need a quarterback, I would be paying 20%, maybe even higher. I'll talk about FAAB as we go, but we're at the point of the year where you're either already blown it all and you're just hoping you get some of these guys snuck in. Maybe you have a ton left. You almost want to save some of that in case there is another Madison or something to emerge here down the stretch. But ultimately, you got to go out and get the guys. It doesn't come with you. So if you need a QB and I say 20% bad, maybe you need to blow half your waiver wire budget to go get the guy. Ultimately, though, as we said, 4 picks, and he's still topped over 20 fantasy points, regardless of your scoring settings. He is now averaging, since last year, over 22 fantasy points per game. He was the QB6 last week. He's the QB6 on average across his 6 starts. Beautiful stuff. Absolutely beautiful stuff from Taysom Hill. And now he gets the Jets, the worst rushing defense in the entire NFL. He went for over 100 yards on the ground last week. He's now had 10-plus carries in every single start dating back to last year, an average of 50 yards per game, but over 100 this last week. Unbelievable. Just a great the definition of the Konami code. Yes, there is the concern of the mallet finger, of the plantar fasciitis, but that he had that all game, and he still was getting it done. So as long as he's out there, as long as he doesn't have surgery, sure, there's the risk he gets sat because of the injuries, but how do you win if you don't roll the dice? If you need Taysom Hill at quarterback, you probably need to roll the dice, and who better than this guy at this point? Now moving on to one of my favorite wide receivers on the waiver wire. Doesn't have as much sizzle, not as much like explosive, true league-winning upside, in my opinion, but I think could be a very viable, just set, forget wide receiver 3 at this point. That's Russell Gage. And maybe he could be a league winner given the fact that he just had 12 targets, hauled in 11 of them for 130 yards, was a top 15 wide receiver in PPR and half PPR leagues this past week. But more importantly, the consistency has been there. 7+ targets in 4 of his last 5 games, averaging about a 25% target share in that span. That was a season high, of course, with these 12 targets, but still sexy to see. Not a bad schedule here down your playoffs. There are a couple wide receivers I'm going to talk about a little bit later who I do think have higher ceilings, more blow up, like could just go banana land upside. But in terms of just a nice, steady top 35 option from here on out, that's Russell Gage. I believe in the guy. He's the clear-cut number 1. The only way that would get derailed is if Calvin Ridley shows up, but I don't see that happening at this point. It seems to me like he's done for the season. It's kind of a lost year. I can't imagine the team is trying to get him back at this point anyways. So lock in Russell Gage, their number 1 target, 7+ in 4 out of his last 5. Love him moving forward. Now, at the running back position, my number 1 pickup in terms of rest of season type of usability would be Dontrell Foreman. And this is just a guess. We don't know exactly how this backfield is going to shake out. But last time he was out there coming off a bye this week, he had 55.9% of the rush share, 4.8% target share. Not great. But when he's been used in the receiving game, he's ripped off some nice chunk plays. He's nice with blockers in front of him. Still has a little bit of juice there. He ran for 19 carries, 109 yards against the Pats. He did lose a fumble. Wasn't all that pretty. But he was the early down churner. And I think, it's between him and Hilliard, right? And Hilliard did rip off that 68-yard touchdown, had more fantasy points, is averaging over 15 points in half PPR leagues across his 2 starts. I get all that. But with Jeremy McNichols likely back after the bye, I think Foreman is the one that has the more secure, big down, different skill set, grinder at the end zone here. And you get the Jags coming in week 14 here. If anybody has watched any Jaguars football lately, that team has quit. They are horrendous, and we're going to watch Foreman steamroll them, in my opinion. So as a just usable right off the bat and probably during your stretch run, I could see Foreman being a nice bet for 15+ carries any given week moving forward here. Now, in terms of just a 1-week rental, maybe even more upside belongs to JaMycal Hasty at only 1% rostered. We don't know quite yet what this backfield will look like entering Sunday. It's still so early in the week, but I think it's worth a nice 25% or so of your FAAB to find out, given that there is nobody as of right now besides JaMycal Hasty, the true last man standing. Eli Mitchell back in the concussion protocol, given this is his second time in there. That does seem risky. He could be a franchise piece in the future, given how well Eli Mitchell's looked. I don't think he's going to be out there this week. That's just I'm not a doctor, just a first guess, but the fact that this is his second time in there doesn't bode well. Then we had Jeff Wilson having a little flare up on his surgically repaired knee, despite the fact he played 2 freaking snaps. Done with him. Useless. Get out of here, Jeff Wilson. And then ultimately, we also have Trey Sermon on IR getting hurt on special teams. There's nobody. There's nobody else. It's him, JaMycal Hasty, and Kyle Juszczyk. And whenever he's been used, I'm not saying Hasty's this world beater, but when he gets in space, he's a solid receiver. He can zip up the lane. It's just one of those run schemes that it typically doesn't matter who's back there. We've seen Orlando get ridiculous dating back to like Mike Anderson days with Mike Shanahan there at the helm. 1,000-yard rushers out of nobodies. Hasty could go right in there. We've seen him already have monster games in the past as the lead back in the scheme. He could walk right into a big workload. Cincy, a must-win game for both of these teams, kind of the, as Barcelona's called, the loser goes home type of game. And since he's much more generous to running backs than they are wide receivers, a better pass D than they are a run D, I could see Hasty having himself 15, 20+ touches, 100 total yards, a nice score there. So as a 1-week rental, I think he could really do some damage. And then if Eli's symptoms ever lingered or something of that nature, we've harped on how good the playoff schedule is for the 49ers, just every position, but including running backs, Atlanta, Tennessee, and who's the last one? It's even worse. But I can forget right off the top of my head, Texans, an even worse team. awful defenses they've got coming up. So keep those guys in mind for sure. Now, a couple of the wide receivers I was alluding to, as we always talk about, potential league-winning upside happens every year. A blow-up wide receiver. It could definitely be Marquez Valdez-Scantling at only 21% rostered here. He's seen 19 targets across his last 2 games, and that included with Lazard back in the lineup last week before the bye. He didn't have a monster game, 9 fantasy points in that one, but right before that, 10 targets, hauled in 4 of them, ultimately had 22 fantasy points. He is the lid lifter here, and you look at their soft schedule coming up. Bears, top 10 matchup for wide receivers. Baltimore, nobody's given up more explosive plays on the season, and especially the receiving game. The most 30-plus yard receptions surrendered by Baltimore, and they just lost Marlon Humphrey. Then you got the Vikes and your fantasy championship. Bottom 3 against wide receivers right now. Scantling could go bananas. Of course, we know the alpha here. It's Devontae Adams, but Randall Cobb, his status is up in the air with this groin injury, and Scantling was kind of the clear-cut number 2 anyways over these last couple of weeks. So give me Aaron Rodgers, clear number 2 any day of the week with soft matchups down the stretch. He could be your true blow-up candidate. But if not him at wide receiver, what about this KJ Osborne kid? My 6th highest player this week, my 3rd highest wide receiver, only 5% rostered, so very good chance he's out there in your leagues. He stepped right into the every down role after Adam Thielen stepped out. The next 70 snaps as the number 2 wide receiver saw a 17% target share there, hauling in 4 of his 7 targets, 47 yards, and a TD in that Week 13 game. Now, if Thielen's back, of course, Osborne back to the bench, not a stretch run season ring. But we do have Thielen with a high ankle sprain. Typically, that's a 3 to 5 week absence. We've seen that all year, any high ankle sprains. So that could sideline him the rest of the season, in which case Osborne would be locked into an invaluable role with Cousins. Yeah, I don't love the guy real life-wise, but he is serving up fantasy goodness week in and week out for his pass catchers. And Osborne, he's seen 6 targets in only 5 games, 6+ targets. In those games, he has scored 14, 20, 5.6, 19, 8.8, and 14.7 fantasy points, averaging 5 receptions, 63.6 yards, and in 3 out of 5 games, he scored a touchdown. Wide receiver 34, 14, 69, 13, 21 in those games. You tell me this guy's not going to see 7+ targets at least this week and give you like that top 20 wide receiver upside against the Steelers team that's bottom 10 against wide receivers? Love him as a 1-week rental, but has that type of upside to go bananas down the stretch. Word of the day, bananas. But I do think KJ Osborne, one of those guys that could be a huge addition for stretch runs here. And a guy that we know, we've seen it. Osborne's more of the sexy appeal of the unknown, but a guy we know gets it done, and you've heard me talk about him, if he could ever get himself healthy, is Sterling Shepard. He's been hurt throughout the season, hurt early in games, but the 3 full games he played, 7 receptions on 9 targets, 113 and a TD, wide receiver 8, 9 catches and 94 yards, wide receiver 21 on 10 targets, 10 catches for 76 yards, 14 targets, wide receiver 19. Oh, and then dating back to the last 2 of last year, also went crazy with 112 and a TD on 8 catches and 10 targets and 77 yards and a TD on 9 catches. Was wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 11 across those games. So we've seen him be a top 20 wide receiver in all 5 of his last 5 full games played. The rub here is 1, he can't get himself healthy. 2, Daniel Jones isn't healthy. Then Mike Glennon's also out. So we're looking at like Jake Fromm potentially throwing to him. So this is more of a stash and let him get healthy like Daniel Jones, because down the stretch, they got Dallas. They got a nice, easy cakewalk schedule for the final fantasy playoffs. I could see Sterling Shepard being a nice key cog, especially in full PPR leagues where he is just an alpha target hog if he's healthy. Not a bad play at all at only 28% rostered, worth a decent amount of your FAAB. Now, this guy could be the best pickup of the week, Dontrell Hilliard, 42% rostered. Last time out, had 131 yards on the ground and a TD, was avoiding tackles left and right with 5 total of them. Did haul in 1 reception for 2 yards. The week before that, had 10 targets and 8 catches. The rub here, though, yes, averaging over 15 fantasy points per game in his 2 last games, looking very solid. And if he maintains that clear-cut role as like a 1B plus the clear-cut receiving back, I would bump him to number 2 or 3 ahead of Foreman on this list. I'd be the more valuable guy. My concern, as it says on the banner there, beware of Jeremy McNichols. He's been with the team all year, whereas Hilliard's only been there for a few weeks. And yes, Hilliard has outplayed him. He's looked better, and McNichols has been hurt. Maybe, I believe in Vrabel being that earn your spot and you're available and you've thrived. You're it now. Could be him. That's why he's all the way up here at 8. but I'm also wary of McNichols coming in and these two just are splitting those third down works, or worse, Hilliard sent to the bench. So that's why I'm not sitting here, as a lot of people may be recommending, throwing out a ton of money to go get Hilliard. Nah, I wouldn't hate having him. I'd like to see what happens, because if he does maintain this role, like I was saying, he'd be the top pickup of the week. So good to put on the bench. Would like to see what happens. Maybe even usable against the Jags. He could be. But ultimately, I'm not spending a ton of money to go acquire this guy. I'd rather have Foreman. His role feels more locked in. Now, everybody sprinted out to go get Chuba Hubbard out of this backfield. The Panthers, after we saw McCaffrey go down, most likely going to see the majority of touches. I mean, he did average over 15 carries at 80% of the workload, rushing workload there with McCaffrey out earlier in the season. But even still, with that work, Chuba never finishes an RB1, was extremely inefficient, was below fantasy points, below the expectation in all but 2 of his starts. And in those ones that he was above, it was by like half a point. He never was more than a full point above fantasy points per expectation. So highly inefficient Chuba Hubbard. Then we got Ameer. All those games came without Ameer Abdullah on the roster. Since he's been on the team, we've seen Abdullah run 37 more routes than Chuba. He's seen 13 more targets than Chuba. He's been the clear-cut pass-catching guy on a team that's probably going to need to throw a lot, given how bad they are. Now, against Atlanta, this upcoming week against the Falcons, of course, Chuba is in a smash spot, as they should win the game. He should be bleeding clock, should see about 20 carries. But if they get down, Abdullah would do a ton of damage in the passing game. And with a tough schedule moving forward after that, you got the Bucks, the Saints. Those definitely could force the Bills. All of those could force negative game scripts. And in that type of script, I do think Abdullah is the more valuable guy. So I 4% rostered and very, very minimally attention going towards his way this week. I think he could be a sneaky running back stash. Let's see what happens. Let's see how this plays out. Very, very overlooked right now. I think Ameer Abdullah could have a nice stretch run role, given the game scripts that this team is lining up for after they face and smash Atlanta this week. And maybe they don't even smash Atlanta. They're not that good. I don't even know why we're talking about them as a clear-cut lock over them. My number one tight end of the week is Tyler Conklin. Kind of makes pretty obvious sense with Adam Thielen banged up. Conklin, second on the team with 9 targets. Yes, we did see God mode Justin Jefferson, but right behind him, the second highest leader of targets on the team was Conklin. He's 30% rostered. I would say if you need a tight end, 20% or so of FAAB. But again, if you're desperate for a tight end and you just need to blow it all, it makes sense at this point of the year. You're not going to get the money with you. And this guy, especially if Thielen's injury lingers 3 to 5 weeks as it could, would be a tight end 1 for all those games. He had 12.6 PPR fantasy points with 7 catches, 56 yards last week. Just solid, safe target share. Ran a route on season high 78.7% of the dropbacks. Just a nice low end tight end 1 here for your stretch runs. Don't forget, this guy did have 10 plus fantasy points in 3 of 5 games for a nice stretch. Was a top 12 tight end during that span. And that was with everybody around. Now he could be the number 2 target for the next few games in your fantasy playoffs. Solid guy to keep your eyes on. It might be gross. You might have to swallow back puke. And it is a huge risk to take if your fantasy playoffs are on the line here. But we got Cam Newton, 29% rostered, facing the Atlanta Falcons. Now, if you miss out on Taysom Hill, who's also a big dice roll himself, Cam Newton also defines Konami. I know last time out against the Dolphins was abysmal. One of the worst performances we've seen of a quarterback in maybe ever. It was just that atrocious. So if you can't go there, you can't stomach it, I would understand. But remember, we're not rostering Cam Newton for his arm. It's for his legs. Over 55% of his production has come via the leg points. And I'm not going to hold the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins looked on paper to be a good matchup because early in the season, teams were destroying them. Over these last few weeks, the Dolphins lead the NFL in sacks and are second most in interceptions, given how great they've been now they're back at full health since week 9. One of the best defenses in the league over these last few weeks. So I'm not going to hold that against Cam Newton. Last time he faced a beatable defense was Washington. He had 26 fantasy points. Let's keep both of these games in mind. Atrocious? Yes. Very solid fantasy producer the week before that? Yes. And the game before that, when he only played a few snaps, he had 2 touchdowns. So I do think there's still very high upside facing a Falcons team that is second most fantasy points allowed to QBs. He's also only 5,400 on DraftKings. I'm going back to the Cam Newton well. Could cost me, but I'm going to roll the dice. It's gross, but I could see him running in at least 2 scores, throwing another 1 or 2. Not a bad play, in my opinion. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has been a solid wide receiver these last couple of weeks. He's only 14% rostered. They're coming off their bye. It's been a nice 8% or so FAAB on him. Julio Jones has been activated. And if he's good to go, then you can send Westbrook this recommendation back to the heap, back to the trash pile, because he would not see much of a target share. But lately, he has been dominating, led the team in wide receiver targets in back-to-back weeks. It's turned it into 17.7 and 10.5 full PPR fantasy points. The wide receiver 17 and 33 across those games. Scored a touchdown last week. He's been the main guy, the main passing vein here, and would likely be so again with no A.J. Brown, no Marcus Johnson, and who knows if Jones is going to play, lining up against a Jaguars team, giving up the fourth most points to wide receivers this coming week. He'd be in a great spot. He'd end up being a top 30 play, no doubt about it, if he is the lone man standing. Let's see if Julio Jones is activated, how this develops, but certainly worth rostering at this point while we wait it out and see. If you're looking for another tight end, look to Washington. I don't know if it's going to be Ricky Seals-Jones. I don't know if it's going to be John Bates. Be quite frank, I don't think it matters. They're facing Dallas, who are giving up the 6 most points to the tight end position. Yards per 8.1, like big play after big play. And Seals-Jones, don't forget, when Logan Thomas first went down, this guy was playing 100% of the snaps, running 90% of the routes or more in all of those games, and had 2 of his 3 games as a top 12 tight end. One of them, he was on pace for 100 yards the game before he went down too. This is a guy that was very, very usable. Our namesake as well, RSJ. Gotta love that. This team does just scheme. Ron Rivera has always loved scheming to the tight end position. So with Logan Thomas likely done for the year, still no official word there. But Ricky Seals-Jones was a low-end tight end 1 earlier this year. He could get right back to the well and has a nice slate of soft matchups from here on out, twice against that Dallas team and then 2 other cakewalks. I'm into Seals-Jones here for your stretch. The Eagles, the other matchup, the most points allowed to tight ends on the year. So solid. We don't even know if he's going to be out there, so it's not a guy you want to go blow a ton of money for. But if you're looking for a tight end, he's out there in almost all your leagues. And if he doesn't play, John Bates could also do some decent damage as a complete and utter dart throw. Kenneth Gainwell, speaking of those Eagles, 12% rostered. Not worth a ton of your FAAB, given they're on bye. And then who knows what this backfield will look like. They're expecting Howard back, and then now we got a 4-headed nightmare. It could be nothing. But the guy also did score 18 fantasy points, as good as Miles Sanders was. 27 to 9 touches to start the game. Gainwell still scored more fantasy points. That's how it always goes with Miles Sanders. Still doesn't have a touchdown on 135 touches. Gainwell, meanwhile, had 12 carries, 54 yards in the score, 5 catches for 33. Very involved as a wide receiver. And just every time he's gotten work, Gainwell's looked solid. So this is more just like if you want some talent to stash on your bench and see how this backfield shakes out, and given how much work they're giving their backs, I think it's a worthwhile plunge. Really just only if you had a lot of trash to cut. And last but not least, we talked about some earlier league-winning wide receivers. I don't expect either of these guys to be that. But hey, you never know. Crazier things have happened, certainly with Amon St. Brown seeing 12 targets this last week, calling in 10 of them for 86 yards, and that game-winning score, the first win for the Lions. You love to see it. They get Denver this week. Josh Reynolds, the other wide receiver there, 4% rostered. He had 69 yards. Nice. 4 catches, 7 targets. The week before that went 70 and a TD. He has that nice rapport going with Jared Goff here. If one of them continues to separate, my bet would be on Amon St. Brown as the number 1. Pretty easy bet to make after 12 targets and 10 catches. They get Denver this week. Not the easiest of matchups. They just shut down Kansas City. So don't expect us to see too much this week. But the 2 weeks after that, some nice beatable matchups. If Amon continues to ascend, it'd be worth having him on the roster to see what happens. Of course, I'm going to Osborne, MVS, Russell Gage before them. But if you miss out on all those guys and you still have some space for wide receivers, like what's the point in continuing to roll at Rashad Bateman, huh? I'm done. I'm cutting him. I'd rather have Amon St. Brown at this point. So check those guys out indeed. And before we get into all your questions, we got about 25 of them. Wolfpack, love to see it. Awesome. Keep them racking up. Would love to answer as many as you guys have. Of course, that thumbs up does help us continue to grow. Would be so greatly appreciated. And of course, if you haven't subbed, we would want to get to that 2K goal. We're so close. It would mean the world if you're enjoying this content, you like what you're hearing. But the last thing I want to cover here, now that we are at week 14, as I was alluding to, if you're already in the playoffs and you just need some upside on your bench, you don't need that wide receiver 6 anymore, and you want to stash them, this is where cuffing season comes in. You got to cozy up on to those backup running backs that could explode, ignite down your stretch run. So I'm going to go through 8 that are widely available. Of course, you don't need me to tell you Madison and A.J. Dillon and Tony Pollard, and now Sony Michel, who we've been raving about, my number 2 pickup last week. That really panned out. Pretty pumped about that. Darrell Williams. All those guys are owned in 65% or more leagues. Like, we're not going to go through that. Just wanted to, if any of those guys are out there, of course, before any name I've talked about, go get them, right? I'm going to look at guys that are out there in all but 80 out there in 80% more of leagues. Number 1, Khalil Herbert. We saw him as a starter, went for over 100 in both of his first games to start, including against that brutal Bucs defense. Was a beast. It just looked like a monster in their playoff schedule. I think David Montgomery's going to bring titles this year, just like he did last year. But should he go down again, then it's going to be Khalil Herbert delivering those titles. So between the production we already saw, the talent is very real. Impressed much more as a receiver than I expected. I think Khalil Herbert would step right into a 3-down role if something happens to David Montgomery, and he has the schedule to destroy. So he's a guy I'm going to be putting on the back end of all of my benches. My number 1 handcuff, but not far behind him is Samaje Perine, 7%. There's a time we thought this might be a committee between him and Joe Mixon, the fantasy community that we did, given how well he looked. He does look explosive. He's a pass catcher. He would be also, what I look for in these handcuffs is 3-down upside. I don't want a guy that's going to walk into a committee and be gross like the Chargers, right? A good explosive offense. But if Eckler goes down, I don't think Justin Jackson's a 3-down back, so he's not on this list. He'd be like 10 or 11. But I have 8 names that you could go look for before. I do think Perine would take over as close to an every down back. Chris Evans might mix in a little bit, but Perine has looked solid in his limited work. Dating back to last year when he's seen 13-plus touches, he's been a top 15 guy. So I could see that again for Samaje Perine here down your stretch runs. Ronald Jones, number 3, 24% rostered. We've seen how good playoff Lenny is. I do think this would be a little bit more of a committee. Lenny leads the NFL in running back receptions right now. Like, that's not going to happen with Ronald Jones. He's not a good receiver. It would be a Gio Bernard Ronald Jones show. But whenever Ronald Jones gets carries, I still think he, as good as Lenny's been in fantasy, I think Ronald Jones is a more talented, pure runner. And so if that ends up happening where this guy's getting 12 to 15 carries a game in this offense, he'd be a top 20 running back play each and every week. So certainly like Ronald Jones. Devontae Booker's number 4 on my handcuff list. We already saw it. He was the every down horse, 80% plus snaps in almost all of those games. Certainly involved as a wide receiver, like a 15 to 20% target share across all those games. That's what you're looking for your handcuff upside. It's a gross offense, but volume is volume is volume. And Devontae Booker at 27% rostered would deserve a ton of looks. Dearness Johnson, we've already seen light the fantasy world on fire in his 2 starts. Now, Kareem Hunt is back, so that's why he's not number 1 on this list. He would be. He's only 18% rostered. Kareem Hunt would be the de facto number 1, but I do think after how great Dearness played, I wouldn't be shocked if they kind of slid him into the Nick Chubb role and gave him 15-plus carries and let Hunt just kind of stay in his Hunt-type role. So I think Dearness definitely should be on rosters here going down your stretch run. We talked about Hasty/Wilson. The playoff schedule is a gold mine here for the 49ers. So if Eli Mitchell's concussion symptoms linger, some of those guys, I think having a backup in this backfield is certainly worthwhile. Hasty I'd go to first as the potential starter this week. And then if he thrives, could be the clear number 1. Wilson did nothing in his opportunities. And the last 2 names I want to hit. Number 7 is Peyton Barber, 0% rostered, but had 1 start this year, went over 100 yards, had about 80 yards above after contact, was churning. Our boy, the truth, loves him. He had touchdowns in the game. So if anything happens, we already know Drake's done. So if something, God forbid, happens to Jacobs, there's nobody else to contend with. So he can catch the ball. He can kind of do it all gross, but he can do it all. So that would be a volume machine, as would be Peyton Barber, and an offense that's very competent and would generate plenty of scoring opportunities for the guy. And then last but not least is Carlos Hyde. If James Robinson's heel lingers, the fumbling issues pop up. We saw Hyde score. He was an 85% snap guy the last time Robinson missed time. He's just a plotter that will fall into the end zone and be okay. They have one of the top 3 matchups for running backs down the stretch. I don't like Hyde. I don't think he's a good talent. But if Robinson continues to fumble his opportunities away, and he's not a fumbler, I don't know why this is happening, is I think 2 career fumbles so far. But if it happens again or he gets hurt, we could see Hyde emerge down the stretch. So those are my top 8 running back handcuffs. Again, Herbert, Perine, Ronald Jones, Booker, Dearness, Hasty, or Wilson, Barber, Carlos Hyde are the guys I would look at here to add to my bench if you got some trash like Rashad Bateman at this point. Not a trash player, but a trash role right now. Get rid of those guys, stash up some of this upside, because if something happens to Montgomery or any of the stars ahead of them, all of those guys could be weekly top 15 options for your playoff stash runs. Alrighty, guys, that's all I got in terms of cuffing season, in terms of my top 15 waiver wire pickups. We're about 30 minutes in. Let's now hit your questions. Thanks again so much for being here. As we get to your questions, guys, that thumbs up button does mean the world, does help us get out to more people. I beat the algorithm. I wouldn't keep asking for it if it didn't matter so much. And, of course, those subs. Get us up, Wolfpack. Continue to grow us on YouTube. What up, Ward Willis? Great to see you, brother. Clinched the bye week. Love to hear it. It's always the only thing that's sad about that is, like, you don't have any action this week. But it's such a nice, comforting feeling. Maybe you play a little DFS. Enjoy the weekend. My only qualm with the bye weeks is I feel like every time I have a bye week, my team explodes during the bye, and then they come back and lay a complete egg when it's time to play again. And I feel like the teams that are grinding it out in, like, the 5th, 6th place battles end up winning the leagues. I don't know. Maybe that's just anecdotal evidence. If you're that good, it might not matter. But I can't sit here and say I'd rather not have the bye. Of course, I'd rather be top 4 in my semis already. Congrats to you, brother. Love to hear it. Betty Thompson, you popped up as a recommended follow. Who am I not to follow one of the most loyal Wolfpack members out there? I'm so pumped to have you. And yeah, great to see you again. You better be there at Old Planners, though. December 26th, my man. Anybody out there in the local area, be there. I'm doing very well, though. How are you doing, Benny? Great to see you. What up, Mohammed? Would you pick up Taysom? Good to see you, too. To play instead of Lamar, given the easy matchup? Oh, as bad as Lamar's been, I would have a real hard time doing that. You know, that sends a bad message to the locker room. Maybe it's the message the locker room needs, though, right? I love the matchup against the Jets. If Taysom was at 100% health, I probably would actually consider this. But given the mallet finger, given the plantar fasciitis, like the half tear in his foot, it's a big risk that he could get benched mid-game. I probably wouldn't. I don't think so. But it's not unjustifiable, Mom. It really isn't. But, man, I don't know. Still riding the high of the Pats. Yeah, the Army-Navy game. Seriously, right? I love that, though. I know it was gross, and a lot of people, boring game, man. I love that shit. Get the linemen fired up. Like, that is the type of game your offensive line loves. Moving forward, bullying these guys off the ball. Just 3rd and 10. Hey, guess what? We're going to run it down your throat and get 10 yards with Ramondre. It was great. I loved everything about it. I love that we're in first place. Sending a message in Bills Mafia face. Just awesome. Riding it high, baby. I'm absolutely with you. Let's let our asshole Pat's colors flourish, baby. Denny Jennings, what's going on? Big W. I love to hear it. Bye week and injury week. Yeah. So it's good you have the bye. Like, you're saying that your lineup's crushed, right? Yeah. So it sounds like your lineup's crushed. I hope you already secured your playoffs. I hope you can get to that bye, Denny Jennings. But hey, man, it's at least it's not the real fantasy playoffs yet, right? Because week 14 these buys are fucking freaking me out how late they are this year. What's up, Howland? We're on to the playoffs. Love to hear it, brother. Great stuff. Let's make sure your lineup is perfect to make sure you crush it down there. What up, Frazier? Thoughts on James Robinson? It is a tasty schedule. I am nervous, though, because Urban is complete and utter nonsense. He's benching him. Even when he's not losing fumbles, he's getting the bench. I don't know. I'm nervous rest of the season. I can't pretend like I'm not, Frazier. The tasty schedule, the way he's played, I think he'll be okay, but his health, you got to keep monitoring it. Certainly sketchy. I'd love to know who your other options are, Frazier, because I don't feel great. Like, it's definitely a queasy feeling. Glad we benched him last week, by the way, for Sony, right? If I'm not mistaken, that ended up panning out pretty well. What's up, Giuseppe? You have Rodgers. Should you keep Taysom Hill or drop him for KJ Osborne, worry Debo, or drop Myers? It's tricky because, like, is someone possibly going to pick up? Like, you're not going to play Taysom over Rodgers, so you don't necessarily need it. But this might be one where, like, fantasy defense is actually offense. If somebody you're facing might pick up Taysom and beat you, because he's facing the Jets, he might go for 28. Like, you don't want that against you. Then you hold him. But if not, if you don't need him and you're not going to be facing him, then yeah, I think you make the move, because I do think Osborne has some real upside. The one thing, though, with Osborne is he's playing Thursday night. So if you're trying to wait it out and hear what happens with Debo, that's not the best of guys to do it with. I think Osborne's a great fill-in if we already know Debo's out, but we're not probably going to know that. And they're saying he's trending towards being back. So that's going to put you in a tough situation, Giuseppe. So just keep that in mind as well. Keenan Allen, 11 other, NFL players not charged yet. Half the Chargers team, Denny. That would have been tough. Better playoff defense, Miami or Philly? I prefer Miami. They get the Jets the first week. So I get that. They'll smash them. Now, if you have a bye, though, that doesn't really matter. They also do get, who was it? The Saints, who don't look like it. We saw all the turnovers with Taysom Hill. So that's a good play. Tennessee, banged up offense. We'll see where they're at in week 17, but I ride Miami here. I love their schedule from 15 with the Jets. Then you got the Saints, all good stuff. Bills, but looking at adding one for the playoffs. Yeah, the Saints facing the Jets this week, but during the playoffs, their schedule is not all that great. Seahawks do have a couple tasty matchups down the stretch. I wouldn't drop Buffalo, though. It's a good defense, Robert. I would keep them going. 49ers, though, have that Houston matchup. I would stash the 49ers of that list. They're not out there in a lot of leagues, so I didn't really look into them, but that easy schedule for the offense also means good things for the defense, too. Ayuk or DJ Moore, full PPR. I'm going to go DJ Moore. Very disappointed this week, Ward Willis and Ayuk. It ended up becoming the George Kittle show in the absence of Deebo Samuel, not Ayuk, as a lot of us expected, including myself. I like DJ Moore against Atlanta. He's already had 2 solid games with Cam back in the lineup. I think he can continue to do that. Boston Scott, fuck me, Wolf. Bus, you and me both, man. And this is the only thing I hang my hat on with that. Not hang my hat. I'm not proud. I'm pumped. Is we just saw Gainwell get 18 points. If we had known like Scott was going to be a complete and utter useless healthy scratch, essentially, then we would never have played him, of course. Gainwell got the role I was envisioning for Scott, and he got 18 points, which is what I was envisioning for Scott. So, like, the process was there, but, man, the results, like, I wish there was some sort of report. Like, Boston Scott is emergency only type of back. Because, yeah, he boned me. He boned a lot of people. I was high on him. I recommended him to a lot of people. He was my definite dud of the week. What an absolute loser. And Gainwell went crazy. Watch everyone grab Hasty. Yeah, then Juszczyk has the monster, right? I think it'd be Hasty, though. I do. But that is never without the realm of possibility. MVS, the Corey Davis of the Midwest, always appealing until he gooses. Exactly, right, Ben? That's a great comparison here. Looks sexy. Roll the dice. Vikings, third most points given up to wide receivers. And then he'll get 3 targets. But I have a feeling this is the year he could really put together a nice 3-game stretch. AB is not IR eligible. Do you drop him? I mean, Robert, are you destined for he's going to be out for at least 2 more weeks. And then you got Bruce Arians saying, like, we don't even know if he's ever going to be back with us. Like, if they want to welcome him back. But the thing is he is so damn good if he plays. Like, none of those 3 receivers that you're talking about, unless you're trying to block opponents, are going to touch the field above Kupp, Jefferson, or Moore. So really the only one that would play above any of those guys, would play above Moore maybe, is AB. And maybe even at this point, probably not. But he is the wide receiver 4 in fantasy points per game. You'd hate to drop him, have someone pick him up, and then go nuts against you. So of all the guys on the waiver wires, who am I most terrified to face would be AB in your fantasy championship. So I would not drop him myself. Clinch playoffs. Need the dub for the 1 seed. Let's go, Giuseppe. I love to hear that, brother. Good stuff. Forced to play Hilliard this week. Oh, boy. Not horrible, though. Jags matchup could be good, but I am a little bit wary of McNichols and what that could mean. Cam or Russ this week? I haven't ranked it out yet, Denny. Russ looks like he is getting it back a little bit, though. He should have had 3 touchdowns. It was an 8-week prognosis. It seems like he might be starting to heal up and get cooking again for the stretch. Cam would be a pretty big risk. Who is Russ facing this week? I don't know. I know Cam gets Atlanta, so it's a juicy matchup. Probably going to Russ unless it's a terrible matchup. Arizona shootout game, if I'm not. Oh, no, Rams. I forget exactly what it is. So I have to know the matchup. You know me. I'll do my rankings tonight, show tomorrow. Give you a better answer. Top wide receiver start this week. I mean, Cooper Kupp. It's always Cooper Kupp. I don't even have to know the matchups, grind. It's always going to be Cooper Kupp for that one. Currently second place and battling this week to hold the 2 seed. Love it. First in points scored. I hope that gets a paid off for you, Robert. But either way, get that bye, baby. Jarvis Landry, starter sit. I'm playing him as my wide receiver 3. I got Adams, Evans, and then I'm benching Kirk and Bateman. Done with those assholes to play Landry. 2 back-to-back 12-point days. Now you got a ball team with Marlon Humphreys. Already was kind of a pass funnel. I'm liking Jarvis this week, grind. I think he's a good play. Zeke or Pollard this week. I might go Pollard, the more explosive player. I'd love to just see him rest Zeke at this point, right? I think I'm leaning Pollard there, Ward. KJ Osborne or Van Jefferson. I'm probably going to go Van there, Giuseppe. He's playing great. 9+ targets, getting the touchdowns, looking good. Good luck to you as well, Mitch. Thank you so much for being here, as always, and bringing your positive energy to the pack. Well, we got over 30 of you. If you haven't already hit that like button, please consider doing so, helping us continue to grow. And sub if you haven't already to help us continue to grow that pack. What up, Powder? Crazy game. It was. Love to see it. Who are some of your drop candidates? Rashad Bateman. Number one drop candidate. Done with that piece of shit. Such a good player. So sick of him not being used properly, but I'm not going to continue to suffer through it. 0 points. I'm done. He's my number one drop candidate. Let me know if you have some other guys you're wondering if I drop him or not, but he is the top of my list. You stream Hilliard or Hasty? Sullivan, that depends on if all the 49ers guys are out. If all the 49ers are out, it's Hasty. If not, probably Hilliard, because you're looking at, the pass catching back. Let's go with the one that's been getting it done rather than the complete speculative play. But if he's the only guy, it's definitely Hasty for me. 1 by 2 points versus Josh Allen. Love to see it. 909. I remember you only have like 14 points. You did it, baby. Love to hear that. Got to have 3 people lose and win. Hey, crazier things have happened, brother. You never know. I'm pulling for you at 909. Need my man into the playoffs this year. Love to hear that you got a fighting chance. Last night was real fun. It was just the Hogs, baby. Running old school, grind it out. Love that the Pats can win those type of games. They're built for that shit. Thanks, Wolf, for the daily grind. Bulldog, of course. I love being here. I appreciate you here. And I love that you're in the playoffs in 3 of 3 leagues. Let's go. That's what we love to hear, Bulldog. Good stuff. And now let's get those titles in 3 out of 3 leagues, huh? Mom, would you lose purposely? No, I wouldn't do that crap. I never play the seeding game. Just put your best lineup out there. Fantasy do you want your fantasy locker room knowing you tanked the game? They'll never respect you. No way. It just creates bad juju. I'm all about energy and feel and motivation and momentum. No way. What are your thoughts on Carlos Hyde? We talked about him, eat powder. He's in my top 8 remaining handcuffs, especially with Robinson fumbling and injury concerns. That tasty schedule could go all to him. I think he's worth rostering for sure. Definitely one of my top handcuffs right now that are out there in a lot of leagues. Oh, yeah, Miami defense, I agree, Denny Jennings. These 3, Kirk, Osborne, MVS for Nick Hobie. All very well in the same tier. I might be bitter right now because Kirk really screwed me over this last week. But I'm going MVS, Osborne, and Kirk. Now, if you just need one for the week, I'm probably going to go Osborne. If you're talking about rest of season rankings, MVS, Osborne, then Kirk for me is how I'd rank those guys. Miami or LAC for the playoffs. I'm going Miami, baby, all day, as we talked about. Playoffs, 5th place after 3-game winning streak. I love to hear that, Denny. Pushing forward, coming in with momentum. Those are the dangerous teams. That's what I love. Frazier, Montgomery, Javonte, Michelle, Hilliard, and Stevenson. Nice. Claypool, McLaurin. So, yeah, you got plenty of bench options, plenty of flex options. I don't think we need to go to Robinson until we see that he's fully healthy and ready to go. I think he is. But if you have Allen already, then no. If you're never going to play him, William, right? So, number one waiver priority is much more different for that. Is Thomas droppable? Probably. I don't think we're going to see him again. You already have Knox. He's already a better option. So, yeah, I think he's definitely droppable, William. But no, even though Taysom Hill's number 1 on my list, as just like who do I think is panning out the best of this list, he would not be for you. You need a wide receiver? It might be Gage. It might be MVS. You need a running back? It might be Foreman, right? But no, I would not be blowing that one priority unless you're really trying to block your opponent. Boston Scott sucks. Yep, send him packing. Sanders, I think, is a great one to send packing at this point. He hasn't had a good game in 5 straight weeks. Peace out, losers. Great way to put it, Robert Moreno. Yeah. See you later. Fantasy locker room needs that message sent. No doubt about it. Don't trust it. Yeah, exactly. Kelsey will be the running back one. Seriously. F you, Sirianni, all day. Even though he actually has you guys playing pretty tough football there, Denny. How worried are you with Taysom Hill injury? Got to be somewhat worried, right? The foot, the finger, none of it's good, but he got it out last game and ended up getting you 20 fantasy points. I'm closing my eyes and playing him against the Jets and not looking back. What up, Wolf? What up, Pack? What's up, Gary W? Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in, man. William G. Chargers have number 1. No, you don't blow priority on the defense. Vikings, and then week 15, then the Bears. Finals would have I don't even know what they're playing, but no, you don't ever use that number 1 priority on a defense. You save that in case a big injury happens. Russ playing Houston. Oh, yeah, you got to go Russ there, One Rock. Thank you for the update there. Hilliard for the Antonio Brown, week 16, 17, 18. Maybe he is the breakout. You never know. As I said here, I'm worried about McNichols potentially coming in and eating the cheese and making him a useless play. But could he be the number 1 waiver wire pickup of this list? Yeah, absolutely. Given how well he's looked these last few weeks. Sure could. Russ Texans, yeah. So I go Russ over Cam. Given that matchup. They're both in good matchups. Give me the better player. Eckler hurt. Pick up Roundtree or Jackson. I'd say Jackson, but I think it's going to be a gross committee either way, Will. Do we see Edmonds? I think so. I would start Connor, though, either way, Mitch. No doubt about it. Connor's definitely earned that list for sure. Any news on Waller? The biggest update was he's now day-to-day instead of week-to-week, which suggests he's probably going to be back this week, Emil Collier. So good news indeed. Have the most points in the league with 3 of my 4 leagues and somehow not in first. Yeah. Good to see, though. That's what the sign of a great team is the points. You can get unlucky in matchups and be. Yeah, I know you've come on here and talked about facing the number 1 scorer with your second one highest scorer. That's always the worst, right? Could end up being the case, but man, you got a battle C team. Let's go, Benny. Judy or Bourne for MVS? Probably Bourne. You got the bye, then you got Buffalo. I would go with Bourne there and just see if we're starting to see Judy continue to creep up a little bit. Maybe he can go crazy down the stretch. I don't know. St. Brown or Treadwell? I'm going St. Brown. I don't love either of them, Nick, but I'd go St. Brown over him. 10 of 12. I like it. What's going on, Prebs? Good to see you. We got a super chat coming in. Much appreciated, Ozzy Medina. Thank you again. A good, easy way, free way to support the pack. Thumbs up, subscribing, but super chats also very, very appreciated. So Ozzy Medina, thank you for coming on in, tossing some money. We really appreciate that. Elimination game, baby. Opponent has Taylor and Gainwell. Bye. Well, Gainwell gives a shit, but Taylor, hell yeah. Love to hear that. No other running back and missing an RB2. Drop Edmonds for Dontrell Foreman or number 1 waiver on Gage. If you need a running back, you always got to go by need, right? And I think Foreman, number 3 on my list, right behind Russell Gage. If you need that running back, you got to go Foreman. Are you saying you're trying to play the defensive battle? So who are some other running backs out there, right? Like blocking from Foreman, blocking from Hasty, who could end up being the starter, right? With everybody else banged up there. You got to go and block this guy. If you need Gage, though, you always have to play for your needs first and then worry about blocking your opponent, Ozzy. So if you need Gage, if you have a wide receiver 3 hole right now, then you got to use that waiver claim on yourself. Otherwise, though, it's all about getting defensive, blocking your opponents, making sure they do not have the guys they need. So if it comes down to just keeping out of the hands, I'd block Foreman, I'd block Hasty. Go get those guys, steal them from your opponent if you don't need Gage. And thanks again so much for the support. I hope that answered your question, but add any follow-ups. Of course, I'm here to answer whatever you got. But really, really appreciate that, brother. Thank you. Thanks for your words of wisdom. Clitch playoff. Love to hear it, Pat Sullivan. I think it's back-to-back years, if I'm not mistaken, right? Love that stuff. Mitch Chavez, 4 in a row. First place in the league. Keep that momentum rolling. Hell yeah, baby. Just don't use all your points in your bye week, Mitch. That's what always happens, right? Larry Viggs, worried about McLaurin. Yeah, I am too. Sit either for those guys, though. Not McLaurin. He gets Dallas, and I know how boom or bust he's been, but I can't do it. Hollywood Brown, too, like as bad as Lamar's been, he's so good all year. I can't sit any of those guys for those 3. I like them, but I don't love them enough to bench those 2 guys that are definitely – at the end of the day, though, Larry, this is what I would say. If you have a bad gut feeling about one or the other, you got to follow your gut. It's not unreasonable. It's not like you have to lock in McLaurin and Hollywood Brown and not look back. Both those guys have had their booms and busts. If you're feeling a bust for one of them, you got to trust your gut because all 3 of those guys you outlined also have really real blow-up upside. Now, I would be going, if I'm going to bench one, it would be for Van or for Osborne. It wouldn't be for MVS, who's just like, you're hoping for the long ball. But I personally would not bench either of those guys. At the end of the day, you die on your own sword, though. You got to end up benching one if you have a bad gut feeling. Thoughts on Piran? William G. I covered all my top 8 handcuffs. So rewind the show. You'll see a banner that says top 8 handcuffs. Talked about him. He's my number 2 handcuff, though. Definitely has 3 down upside. Mixon, we've seen get hurt. He even limped off a little bit this last game. Certainly, at only 7% roster, deserves a back-end bench spot. Hey, thank you, Danny Jennings. We always appreciate you being here. We'll see you tomorrow, as always. You're the man. We really appreciate you, Denny. Keep Boston Scott now because it's I don't know that you need any of those guys. It's just a mess of a game. You keep Sanders because he's the best talent, but you don't need a handcuff there, in my opinion. Thanks again, Ozzy. We really appreciate that support, too. Ward Willis tossing us a super sticker. Man, so appreciative, so generous of you guys tossing that. Not even a question, just showing your love, showing the support. Ward Willis, really appreciate you, man. Thanks so much. I wish I could see what the sticker showed, but it is appreciated, no doubt about it. Javante, Najee, Jacobs, Gibson, Breida. Damn, love it. Yeah, I'd get rid of Breida. He's the 3rd fiddle now because of the fumble. Put the ball on the ground, and now he's behind Zach Moss again. So, yeah, I'd grab Gage if you need a wide receiver. Absolutely. Breida's never touching your lineup with those 4 backs. So, yes, go get Breida. Go get Gage. If you miss on him, get Osborne, get MVS, any of those guys. defensive battle. So, yeah, go block his ass. More double talk coming out of LA. Yeah, it could end up being gross. Rams should roll. Yeah, Tiberius Kane. He was a beast, right? The only guy to go over 100 yards for the Rams this year. Was a monster performance from Sony. So, yeah, totally could. Who's the better pickup of Thielen out? Conklin or Osborne? I go Osborne. So, yeah, I go Osborne there. But if it depends on your team need, of course, right? So, I go Osborne. So, Hasty or Wilson? Well, it's looking like Mitchell's going to be out. Okay, so I know he's got the concussion. I don't know if there's any new updates today. But Wilson also had a knee flare-up, the surgery knee he had. So, I would go for Hasty first. Now, if both of them are active, I do think Wilson will get the nod first. But right now, it's looking like he might be out. So, we'll see. Thank you again, Willis. It sounds like the sticker is a guy lifting and saying, keep it happily. Keep it up happily. I love it, Willis. I got to go back and look for that. But thank you so much. Much appreciated. Made playoffs in 2 of 3. There we go, Prebz. I know it started out the year pretty rocky, so I'm pretty pumped to hear that you've turned these things around because you're one of the most loyal guys we have out here. So you have the chance for 800. Oh, man, that would be awesome. I mean, appreciate it, of course. You toss us a tip, but not needed at all. I do appreciate it. So let's get you that 800, though. Either way, just for you, not for us, for you, brother. But yes, you're the man, Prebz. Let's get that. Let's take that thing down. Thank you, William, for being here all the time, asking some great questions. Wolfpack, that's all we got. So thank you so much. I hope those top 15 pickups help. I hope the top 8 handcuffs to stack your bench with some upside down the stretch help. Awesome stuff, guys. Really, really appreciate it. Ben, of course, I'll get your last question in here. I would go Chuba. I know I'm not that high on him, but especially against Atlanta this week, could be a big play. Season long, I could see Foreman being better, but Chuba, is going to get the work, and they already talk about wanting to run the ball 30 times. So they're going to try. They're going to try to force feed him. We'll see what happens. But best of luck, Wolfpack. I hope you get all the waiver people you need. I'll be live tomorrow, 7 p.m. for your ranking show. Thursday with the Truth, 7 p.m. I think we're going to go a little early, actually, 6:45 to try to get you guys. We keep going against the wire there for the questions down the stretch. So we're going to go a little early, 6:45 on Thursday to kick off week 14. Can't believe we're here, Wolfpack. But thanks again. On your way out, if you haven't already, consider hitting that thumbs up button. If you haven't subscribed, help us get up to 2K. We so appreciate whether you're here live with us or catching the replay. Always live Monday to Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 11 a.m. on Sunday as well, answering all your questions all week because I love you guys. Best of luck in that world full of fancy sheep, guys. Be the wolf.